Hello, everybody.
Hi, Gina. Who is this
Welcome.
person that's with us? We have an extra person here. It's so weird.
It must just be a random accident. This is like a Zoom bomber,
A Zoom
right?
bomber.
That's right. I'm hanging out.
Just kidding. That is none other than Eric Ottinger. He's the one and only art director for Boys Life magazine.
It's basically
Well,
like a celebrity guest today, basically.
Not the one and only. Kevin Hurley, who's going to be on later this week, is really our art director that does most of Boys Life.
Okay.
So I'm the design director at the magazine division, so I oversee all of that, but most of what you see on the pages of Boys Life comes from Kevin's hand.
Don't give him too much credit, Gina. Don't give him too much credit.
Well, okay, that was fair. I was going to say Eric keeps us in line, and he proved that by immediately proving I was wrong. The very first sentence I said.
Sometimes Eric gets ideas and they go beyond art, and that's when you know you're in trouble, when he starts coming up with ideas of, what we're all supposed to be doing and stuff.
That's right.
Yes.
Every day.
So we've got Eric on today because he is demoing our art for the day. If you guys have been keeping up with our schedule, today on Art-O-Ree, we are demoing a work of art with acrylics. So only Eric was up for that task. We are lucky because he's not only the best option we could have had, he was the only one willing to take on this one. This was a challenging medium, I would say. I don't know how you felt about it, Eric. What were your thoughts going into it?
Well, acrylics are something that I've done sporadically throughout my life. Not for quite a while, but back in the college days and a little bit after that, I painted a lot more. These days, I just sit and stare at a computer, so not as up to date with the acrylics, but it's kind of like riding a bike too. Once you understand how to do something like that, you can always pull it back out and use it again.
And yesterday we had Joey Ellis on demonstrating Photoshop with his fancy computer system, and then at the end, he also did some pencil and paper sketches, which is really cool. So it's good to go back old school every once in a while. And not only that, but it's a lot easier for kids to try at home. They might not have an advanced computer system, but the supplies for today are not totally out of the ordinary. And Gina, you may have already mentioned this, it could fulfill one of the requirements for the Art Merit Badge.
That's right. So let me pull that up. Requirement 4 for the Art Merit Badge is what we are aiming to tackle this week. And requirement 4 asks you to render a subject of your choice in 4 ways. And then it goes into a bunch of options for ways to do it. We talked about a computer drawing or painting yesterday. We actually also touched on a pencil sketch yesterday. And today we are talking about 4G, which is acrylics. So if you tune in every day this week at 2 p.m. Central, at the end of the week, you're likely to have 4 or more sketches to show your merit badge counselor and say, hey, did I complete requirement 4? Only he or she can sign off on it, but we have a good feeling if you do this, it may be acceptable.
And if you miss one of the live videos, the videos are archived on the Boys Life Facebook page, right? So if you missed yesterday's, you can still go watch it. Watch today. We'd love to watch you live because you get feedback and you can leave comments and things like that. But if you can't, go to the Boys Life Facebook page, watch it that way.
Right. And at the bottom of the screen, go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say, I would just add to that, for those that watched yesterday or those that are going to go back and watch yesterday's recording, Joey had mentioned about continuing a drawing, even if it's turning out terrible, right, to finish it all the way through. And as hopefully most of our scouts know, with something like the merit badge, we don't add or subtract from the requirements. And so if the requirement is to render a piece of art of your choice using 4 different media, don't worry if it's a good painting or bad painting or a good drawing or bad drawing. If you attempt it and you have that completed piece of work, then you've fulfilled the requirement.
Totally. I love that piece of advice.
Yep.
So if you want to see yesterday's sketch, it's not too late. It's still on the Facebook page, like Aaron mentioned. There's also a URL at the bottom of your page, go.boyslife.org/learn to draw. That's where you can see the schedule for the week and who's up next to draw. obviously Eric's up today. Tomorrow we'll show something else. Also Thursday and Friday, 2 p.m. Central, we'll have other guests on. In about 4 minutes, Eric is going to show us how to create a piece of art with acrylics. Eric, are acrylics attainable for, let's say, like a Cub Scout who wants to paint along with you in a few minutes? Like, is it attainable as like, is it?
Absolutely. And
So
so
go ahead.
Well, I don't know if you're getting towards, can you find them readily? Yes. Any of your local hobby stores, Michael's, Joann's, Hobby Lobby, even places like Walmart, you can find acrylic paints there. And something that I had mentioned on the post that was on Brian on Scouting, we had a few people on there asking questions about supplies. And I made the point that normally with acrylics and oils, you paint on a canvas. And the canvas can be either a stretched canvas, right? And I've got one of those here today. So looks like this. And when you flip it over, you see on the back side, there's a wooden frame and the canvas material is wrapped around it. Or you can also get these canvas boards, all right? So this is skinny board. It's got a canvas texture on one side. My kids were making some art on this one already. And that's normally what you use to paint on. But my recommendation, particularly for those that are just starting out and you're not sure if you like acrylic yet, don't spend a whole bunch of money on it. You can get a cheap set of paints for not too much, and even use cheap brushes that you can get at any of the hobby stores, and paint on heavy paper or a piece of cardboard. You'll see in the video I show taking a piece of cereal box, right? Flipping it over and painting on this side. You want something heavy enough that the paint's not going to wrinkle and warp it. So don't use something like notebook paper or computer paper, because that's too thin, and the wetness of the paint will just buckle the paper. But anything that's thick enough, like that cardboard or even corrugated cardboard, I'm sure plenty of us have boxes from Amazon or grocery stores or whatever that have been delivered in these past few months. Just cut that apart and use a piece of that, and that's perfectly fine.
Love it.
So yes, very attainable.
Now, Lynn mentions that she loves Bob Ross, okay? Is that what we can expect today, that kind of tone?
I don't know if I'm quite as calming and happy as Bob Ross, but I did my best, right? My Cub Scout best. So, yeah, no happy trees in the demo today, but we'll see what we can do.
Calming, Eric. I think you're pretty calming. Aaron's worked with you for years. Aaron, what do you think?
I find Eric to be the opposite of calming, but I believe at this video today, it's going to be very calm, very good. I'm kidding. He's great.
Well, guys, is there anything else we need to say before we go to the demo?
I just think it's worth repeating one more time. Eric said it already, and Joey said it yesterday. You don't have to be great at this from the very beginning. I'm just gonna guess that a lot of folks trying this at home have never done this before. And when I was a kid, I loved to draw, and I was terrible at it. It was awful, and that's why I'm a writer now. But I still think it's encouraging to know that you don't have to create a masterpiece. You're not going to be Norman Rockwell today, but you're gonna get out there and you're gonna try, and that's the first step on your journey. And maybe your journey ends when you're in the merit badge, and that's totally cool. Who knows? Maybe you find that you really like it and you end up doing it. It ends up becoming a hobby, or who knows? Maybe you're the next Eric Ottinger. Maybe someday you'll be doing a Facebook Live video telling people how to do acrylics. Who knows?
Good point, Aaron.
I will just add to that. Lots of people, when they're first starting out, no matter what the art is, right? If you're playing an instrument, if you're a writer like you, Aaron, if you're making visual art, many people get discouraged right away because they see what other people are doing, right? Whether you're looking at works in a museum, in a book, on Instagram, other places on the web, and keep in mind that what those people are showing is the best of what they have, right? So don't compare yourself to what you see there. And you try to draw your horse like Joey was talking about yesterday, and it's got that wonky leg on it. Don't give up and throw in the towel, because those people whose work that you're looking at, have probably been doing it for a number of years longer than you have, and B, they have all of those same terrible drawings and paintings that you're making, but they're not showing them to you. So I had a buddy years ago who was also an artist and also a commercial painter. He painted motorcycle helmets and jet skis and Harley Davidsons and things like that. And he had brought up something where he said, if I do 100 helmets a year, maybe I've got 5 that are really amazing. And the rest are good, but they're not that top notch. And so think about it as a numbers game. And if you keep a sketchbook and you draw on that sketchbook every day, even if it's only for 15 minutes, that repetition is going to build that muscle, all right? So your eyes and your brain and your hands all working together they're all muscles, just like when you go and run around the block or lift weights. And the more you use them, the better you'll get at them. So keep up that repetition of drawing every day, and you'll see over time how you get better. And then choose the best that you have and show that to the world, and keep all of those terrible fat-legged horse drawings, hidden away. So that's just for you to see and work on.
Love it. I have 2 quick questions for you, Eric, from viewers before we start. Lynn's wondering, can she use water-based paints and just kind of go along with what you're doing, or is she going to be totally lost?
No, that's fine. And if she has watercolor, Kevin will be demoing watercolor on Thursday, and so she's welcome, obviously, to follow along there. But if she wants to use those today, it'll be okay. Acrylic paint is water-based in that you clean it up with water, but it works a little bit differently than what watercolor does. And I explain a little bit more about that in the video.
Love it. And I think you talk about this in the video as well, but what kind of brushes would you recommend? She's wondering 2-inch or a fan brush, or I've seen you answer this question before, but I'm still curious.
Yeah, so that kind of depends on what you're painting. Different shaped brushes and size brushes are used for different things. All right, so I've got a few here with me today. So this is a flat brush, all right, and it's got a flat end to it. These are good for putting down large areas of color. If you use something like a fan brush, like she was talking about, this is good for feathering things and blending colors together. And then the other common brush is a round brush, all right? And this one is good for doing detail work. And any of these brushes you can get in a multitude of different sizes. And one thing you'll notice if you go to an art store and you look at buying brushes, you'll also see a wide variety of costs associated with them. And once again, just starting out, I don't recommend buying expensive brushes. Like with most things, typically the more you pay for something, the better quality you get, right? And if you're going to become a painter and do it long time, then I highly recommend getting the best that you can afford. You'll notice that the more professional quality brushes are made with sable, which is a type of hair, oftentimes from horses. Cheaper brushes use a synthetic material, so it's kind of more plasticky, and they tend to not hold their shape quite as well as the more expensive brushes. But for starting out, it's totally fine. You can still make good paintings using the lesser materials. You'll just find that you'll have a better time using more expensive professional materials. But you can upgrade your materials as you go along. As you get more experience and you find that the equipment isn't doing what you want it to do, then that's maybe time to upgrade to something a little bit more pricey.
Sounds like camping gear, kind of. Before we go to the video, any second we're going to the video, but we're getting a lot of agreement on Mike Goldman's comment that you have a true artist's beard.
Oh. Yeah, so this is my quarantine beard. I'm normally clean shaven like Aaron, but beginning of March, my kids went on spring break and I took that week off with them. And the week following was when we went into quarantine. And so no haircut nor shaving since then. So this is, a good 3 months or worth of growing. And I was thinking Aaron, you're a sports guy. I don't know if you follow hockey, but I know a lot of hockey players won't shave their beard during the season, right? Because it's like a good luck thing. And so if they're having a good season, they let that beard keep growing until playoffs are done. So until we come out of it.
Good luck. Well, love it. Good luck to you guys at home who are watching along. Enjoy our demo on acrylic painting.
Hello, Scouts.
My name is Eric Ottinger, and I am the Design Director for Boys Life magazine. Today I'm going to show you how to paint with acrylics. To get started, you need to cover your work surface with something to protect it. You can see I've got some newspaper here. You can use a disposable tablecloth, piece of cardboard, whatever you want, just so long as you get your table protected. Next, you're going to need something to paint on. I'm going to be doing a picture today of Grizz from our Bear Brothers comic that's created by Scott Nickel. And I'm going to be painting Grizz on some watercolor paper. All right, and I've already got him sketched out on there. Most of the time with acrylic paint, you'll paint on a canvas. And canvas comes in all shapes and sizes. This one I got at a local hobby store. If you flip it over on the back, you can see it's got a wood frame and the canvas is stretched around the outside of the frame and stapled in place. And you'll notice if you look close that this part of the canvas is sort of a tan color, but this part is white. So this is what the actual material is, and then the surface gets prepared by being coated with a type of paint called gesso. All right, you can also find canvas boards like this one. Again, at your local hobby store. You can see it's considerably thinner than the stretched canvas. This was one I had already painted. Did a little guinea pig face for one of my kids, but it's sturdy, solid board. You can also use inexpensive materials that you have at home, like a sheet of cardboard. And this is just an old cereal box that you can open it up and use this inside part here that's a nice, smooth, clean surface.
You can even paint on a piece of wood.
So that's just a piece of scrap wood I had in the garage. Acrylic will stick to that as well. It's very versatile. Okay, so you have something to paint on. Now you need something to paint with. Brushes come in a variety of styles. I've got some flat ones here and a round one.
The flat ones are good for
covering large areas, and the round ones are good for detail work and making lines and things like that. All right, we'll need a cup of water so that we can rinse our brush, and a paper towel to blot it dry with. We'll need some paint, and today I've got red, blue, yellow, black, and white. These three colors, red, blue, and yellow, are called primary colors, and you can mix just about any other color you want using those three. With the white, we can add that in to make lighter tints of a color, and with the black, we can mix that in to make darker shades of a color. So these paints here, you see I have them in little portion cups. They came from a larger gallon-sized bottle, but this is Craft Smart brand acrylics that you can find at your local hobby store. Typically you'll find acrylic paint either in a bottle like this, or you might also see it in a tube like this. Usually the tube paints are a little bit more expensive. They are a higher quality. You might hear it referred to as artist quality and student quality. The main difference being that the artist quality the pigments in them are better, so you'll get better coverage. The binder that holds all the pigment together, also a little bit higher quality, so you typically pay a little bit more for these. But for right now, starting out, something like this, perfectly fine. No need to spend a lot of money. A Scout is thrifty, of course. Lastly, we'll have a palette to mix our colors in. Again, this is just a cheap plastic palette you can get at your local craft store. You can also use, again, materials from around the house, something like a plastic coffee can lid, or even this is the top of a blueberry container, right? You just cut that off and mix your paint right in there. Okay, so I'm going to get my palette out here and start adding some colors here that we can use to paint Grizz with. I'll add a little bit of yellow in here for his snout. And we'll add a little bit of red. So so we can get his brown color. And how about just a touch of black? All right. So I'm going to start off with some of this yellow here. I'm going to put just a touch of the black in. You'll notice when you're mixing colors that adding dark colors to light, it goes quite a ways with just a little bit. All right, and I'm going to get just a touch of red in here too. I'm going to try to get that sort of tan color on his snout there. I'll add some more yellow in. And this is something that'll just take you a little bit of time and practice mixing colors to figure out what you need to add, how much you need to add. It's all a bit of trial and error. If you use a color wheel, you can probably find one of those on the internet. That'll help you too to learn which colors mix together. That's looking pretty good. Maybe a little bit more yellow still. It's kind of a light tan. And we'll add just a touch of white to that to make it even lighter. Now we're talking. All right. So with that, I'm just going to come in here and start laying this down. Now you might be wondering what's special about acrylic paint. And what's special about it is it's a plastic paint. So you may have also heard of oil paint or watercolors. Those are kind of the three main paints that artists use. And with acrylics, acrylics are, although they're plastic based, they're also water based in that you can clean them up with water. If you use oil paint, you have to use turpentine or mineral spirits to clear the paint out of your brush and off your palette. And so you don't need any special chemicals with acrylic paint. Just regular old water will clean it up. The other unique thing about acrylics is they're what's called water insoluble. So if you have watercolor paint, that paint is going to be affected by water added to it. The more water you add, the more dilute or lighter it's going to be. And if you take a watercolor painting or even a tempera painting, you may use tempera paints in school. Once that paint is dry, if it gets wet again, it'll reactivate the paint. And so your painting could get ruined. You'll get big wet splotches on it. The colors will start to run. With acrylic paint being water insoluble, once it's dry, it's set. It's a hard plastic. And so you can get it wet once it's dry and it won't do anything to it. So that's a big advantage. You can also use it, as I said earlier, on many different materials. So you couldn't take watercolor necessarily and paint on that block of wood that I had earlier. Oil paint you could, but not watercolor. The other thing, watercolor paint is typically transparent, and so you see the paper coming through, and you can build up lots of different colors using washes. So you add one color on top of another. You let that first one dry, you come back, add a little light color on top of that, and you can build up to get really nice depth in your colors. With both oil paints and acrylics, they're what's called opaque. So they cover up what's underneath. So in this particular case, if I was painting in watercolor, I could paint over this whole thing and you would see all my pencil lines showing through.
And you can see a little bit of pencil line showing through here and there, but for the most part the acrylic is going to cover that up. Grizz's snout is looking pretty good here. Let's move on and mix up some brown that we can use for the back of his fur here. So I'm just going to take what I had for his snout, add some more red in there, some more yellow. I'm going to have to add a little bit more yellow here. I've got kind of an orange color working. Alright, we'll come back and get some more black. The other difference with acrylic, got a little bit too much black in there, with acrylic versus watercolor is the colors in acrylic tend to be a little bit more vibrant. Watercolor is paler colors than what the acrylic is. The acrylic has lots of pigment in it, and so it has bright, vibrant colors. Alright, I think we need to add maybe a little bit of blue to that. Let's see. That's looking better. Alright, close enough. I'm going to go with that. So we'll put some paint in his ears up here. And if when you're painting with the acrylics, you don't feel like you've got good enough coverage, right? So right now, I'm still seeing a little bit of the paper show through here. My paint's not even all the way around. You can always, once the paint is dry, come back and put another layer on top of what you already have there, and that'll help fill some of that in. On the other hand, you might like the way that it looks being a little bit more uneven. Right? Some painters like to show their brush strokes, or like to have portions that are evenly covered, thickly covered, and some that are less so. All right, move my brush over here, and we're just going to lay this down nice and quick. Now again, because acrylics are plastic based, they dry very quickly, and this is both an advantage and a disadvantage. With oil paint, you can have paint on the canvas that's wet for several weeks before it dries out, particularly if you have very thick coverage. With the acrylic, it dries quickly. So you can put some paint down, and if you need to come back over the top of it, it won't take very long. And in fact, you can even take a hairdryer if you want to speed up the drying process. The other thing that's nice about that is because it's water insoluble, you can put light colors on top of dark colors. That's not something you can do with watercolor. With watercolor, you have to let your paper show through for the light colors. So if you have a portion of your painting that's completely white, then you put no paint on that at all, and you just let the white of the paper show through. Here, if I wanted to come back and add some white highlights, like Grizz has in his nose here, I can come back with the white paint, and because it's opaque, once the other paint underneath is dry, I can lay that on top, and it'll make a nice white highlight. Now the disadvantage of the paint drying quickly is that it will dry up on your palette. And some people like to keep a small mister bottle and just mist their paint every so often to keep it moist. Or if, let's say, you need to leave your painting for a while and come back to it later, you can take a piece of plastic wrap from the kitchen, it's cling wrap, and cover your paint with that. But unlike if you're covering food and you just stretch it across, you want to push the plastic wrap down so that it's directly touching the paint, and that way it'll keep all of the air out and it'll keep that paint moist until you get back again and you can uncover it and continue painting. All right, looking pretty good there. Let's clean our brush. All right, now I'm going to get some white here and we'll add to the black and we'll get his nose going. It looks like just a touch of blue in there perhaps. And when you're painting too, you'll notice if you have thin, even coats of paint on the page, those will dry quicker than if you have areas that have thick coverage. And the other neat thing about acrylics, because they're this plastic-based paint, the plastic works like an adhesive. So if you have, especially with these tube paints that are a little bit thicker than what comes in the bottle, you can squeeze out a big chunk of it like this. Let me get a different brush here and move that around, and you can see the different texture that you can get there. And you can use all different types of tools with this. If you want to use a sponge, if you want to stick your finger in there, whatever you want to use to move that paint around. Here, I'll try to get this a little bit closer so you can see it. All right. That's a little bit better. And so you can adhere things to that paint. If you're doing mixed media and you want to stick something to your canvas, a piece of paper, a little plastic toy, toothpicks, Q-tips, whatever it is, once you have that paint on there and it's real thick like that, you can stick something right in there and it'll stay. And then once that paint dries and hardens, it'll be stuck in there just like it was always part of it. Okay, I'm going to go back and make a little bit darker shade here of this gray on his nose. And we're going to bring that right in here on this part. Okay, and we'll clean the brush off a little bit. And then I'm going to come back, I'm going to grab a little bit of white. And I'm going to come back to my brown here. That's the other thing, if you're mixing paint, you want to mix enough so that you'll be able to finish whatever it is that you're painting. If you only mix a little bit of it and your paint dries out before you're done, you're going to find it difficult to go back and remix that same color again. Now if you're just using the paint straight out of the tube, like the blue, the yellow, the red, whatever, then it doesn't matter. You can put the smallest amount that you need on there, and if it dries up, it's fine because you're just taking it straight out of the tube. It's just when you're mixing the colors that you want to be sure to mix enough for what you need to cover. So now I added a little bit of white to this brown, and I'm coming back in just like my reference image and adding some highlights here. Let's see, this is pretty dry. Okay, and a little bit down on the bottom. All right. Now see, he had a little bit of a highlight too here under his chin, but I already mixed that color. That's just what I was talking about. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave that one as it is. We'll come in here and grab some red and put on his tongue. Okay, and then we'll switch over to the black to do the highlight or the outlines. I'll just get straight black here. I got a little bit of red in there, that's okay. The black will cover that up. And then we're just going to come right along the outside here. You can always use your palette or the paper towel or even a piece of scrap paper or cardboard if you need to get some of the paint, extra paint off of there. Alright, now he's got this great big eyebrow. Alright, something like this. Okay. Load a little bit more paint on the brush. And you can see with this flat brush, if I keep it upright like that, it also makes a pretty nice line. You'll notice as you adjust the angle of your brush, it'll affect the quality of the line. And you can get lines that are thick and lines that are thin, lines that taper. Come up this way. Color in his mouth here. Now this brush is a little bit too big to go around his ears, so I'm going to switch over to my round brush once I get his nose done here. Okay. Grab my round brush and some more black. I gotta watch out I don't stick my hand in that big blob of blue paint up there. So even though acrylic dries quickly, when you've got a whole bunch of it like that, it'll stay wet for a while. Okay, touch this up. All right, he's got, oh, let's see, I missed this. His head comes all the way over the top. And then he's got some little lines in his ear. And he's got his squiggle on the nose. And a few little whisker marks in here. Okay. And for our finishing touch, we'll put that little white highlight right on the edge of his nose. See how nicely that white goes right over the top of the dark gray? Perfect. All right. And then our Grizz painting is done. Now, once you're finished, everything has to be cleaned up. And so you don't necessarily want to rinse this paint down the drain. Because it's plastic based, it could clog up your drain. So the best thing to do is just let your paint dry on the palette. And at that point you can come back, and if it's thick enough, you can scrape it and peel it off. If it's real thin like what this is, you can just leave it on there, and the next time you go to use your palette, put paint on top of it. And because it's this hard plastic, it's not going to affect the new paint you put on there. It won't mix with it. It'll just be like its own layer there, and you can just put new paint right on the top of it. If you're using one of your other palettes that you have at home, right? The berry thing, the lids from plastic food containers, takeout containers, you can just pitch that into the garbage when you're done with it. So because of that, that's another reason that you don't necessarily want to put too much paint on your palette at once, because you don't want to be throwing all of your paint away. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to paint with acrylic today. I hope that you made a nice painting of Grizz, or perhaps some other character of your own. If you want to try creating your own comic characters and making a one-page comic, you can send it in to boyslife.org/myowncomic, and we might feature some of those in the magazine coming up. All right, talk to you soon.
Eric, you're so good.
Thank you. Grizz is a fun character to paint.
Yeah, he was cool, and it turned out just so much like the picture you had printed off there. I thought. I'm astounded. I'm glad he liked you.
Well, you know, the difficulty in, we wanted to get all of our comic artists to demo this week, but the truth is that most of them produce their work digitally. So to try to find somebody who uses acrylics or watercolors or some of these other media is a little bit difficult. And that's not to say that there aren't people out there doing it. They're just not the people that we have working for us. So like I said, it's not something that I use on a regular basis, but every now and then, we'll still pull them out and have some fun with it.
One of the things that I find reassuring, Eric, and so I like to draw when I was a kid, and it's not going to shock you because you know me, that my favorite thing to draw as a kid was Star Wars stuff. All the spaceships from Star Wars, all the lasers and the lightsabers. And so seeing you copy a character, and Joey did the same thing yesterday, he traced a character. That's what I used to do. So that's sort of, to me, validating to know that, and I know we said this before, your first piece of art doesn't have to be an original masterpiece. It's okay to trace or copy something that's already been done, just to kind of get the hang of it, right? Just to kind of get the feel of what you're doing. You agree?
Absolutely. In fact, if you find different artists' work who you like, there's a lot of value in trying to copy that work and discover how the work was made, right? So whether it's a drawing, whether it's a painting, the way that the tool is handled is very specific to how the marks are made. And as you fiddle around with your materials and you see, well, this doesn't look anything like what that brush stroke looks like, or what that drawing line looks like. As you experiment more, you'll be able to learn how to hold your materials, how much pressure to use, how much paint to put on or not to put on, to achieve the results that you want. And in fact, I mean, this goes back for hundreds of years. I mean, artists like Michelangelo, in that time, you had a master and apprentice situation. So the master obviously is the one who's skilled, and the apprentice comes in and says, I want to learn to sculpt, paint, draw, whatever. A lot of what they did was starting off copying the master's work, and it wasn't any of their own work at all. In fact, a lot of the master's work was produced by apprentices, right? But then once you learn that technique and understand it, that's when you can start putting your own voice into it. And so, maybe there's 2 or 3 different artists that you like, and you take a little bit from this one and a little bit from that one, and you take your own ideas, and now suddenly you have something new that doesn't look like any of the others before it. But there's a lot of value in copying other people's work.
Yeah, that's like what Joey said yesterday too. So our audience was super engaged as you were doing that. We had some folks obviously painting along with you. Some people, I noticed one scout was drawing a Pokeball, just wanted to do his own thing. I respect that.
Cool. Yeah, very cool.
Let's make sure that scout tunes in on Thursday, because Kevin's going to do his demo with some Pokemon character.
That's right.
So
You definitely want to tune in. Yes. We've got, this is a great comment. Jed said, you're his Bob Ross, Eric.
Thank you.
That's big.
That is big.
A high compliment, yes.
I mean, I if I could be Bob Ross and have my own TV show and line of materials and all that stuff, that would be fantastic.
Well, we have a platform. You could definitely have your own show.
Just saying.
Yeah, I think we'd all like it. A
Are
lot
you
of people
busy at 2 p.m. every single day from here on out.
painting it too. Just kidding.
I'll just do it in the background while you guys read stories.
You can paint the stories as we tell them.
There you go.
That's right.
Maybe one day we should just do that for fun. Yeah. A lot of this is awesome. Dax said he was totally surprised by how little paint you needed to create the painting. I agree.
Yeah, it'll go a long way. And that's what I was saying. I don't know if it was totally clear when I said if you want to use your palette or the paper towel or a piece of scrap paper to get some of the paint off, what I was talking about is if you put too much paint on your brush to begin with, and you go to put it on your painting and you decide, oh, it's going to make a great big blob on there. That's what I meant, is you can scrape some of that paint off onto another surface so that there's not too much in there. But yeah, it'll go quite a ways.
I think kind of off of what you were saying, Aaron, Mackenzie's saying, so fan art is a good thing.
Sure.
So it totally can be.
Yeah. The one caveat that I would put on that is, oftentimes you might see professional or semi-professional artists that create art of somebody else's licensed property, right? So if it's, like you were saying, Aaron, Star Wars characters or Disney characters or something, totally fine if you want to make that fan art and just put it up on your social media and say, hey, I'm a big fan of Stormtroopers, here's my interpretation of that. But the line you want to draw there is not selling work using those characters because they don't belong to you, and that's not right. There's plenty of artists out there that get licenses from those companies, and they're hired by Disney or whomever to create patches, pins, postcards, posters, whatever, using Disney characters, Star Wars characters, Marvel characters, whatever. And that's something totally different because they've been hired by those companies. But just, a scout is trustworthy, and we don't want to be out there taking somebody else's intellectual property and making a buck off of it.
That's a good point. So maybe if you did want to get into a professional sphere and you are inspired by Star Wars, let it take your imagination a step further and create your own characters to draw and sell potentially.
Sure.
That's good advice, Eric.
But also, like I said, if it's just fan art and you're not trying to make money off of it, do as much of that as you want. And particularly, let's say you want to get a job working for Disney on Star Wars, doing concept art or character design, something like that. If you have a lot of that type of work already in your portfolio, that's a big step into trying to get that job. A lot of people that are going to hire you want to know that you can create what they're looking for. right? So if I'm going to hire an illustrator, and I've been doing this for a long time, and so I can kind of see past that. But let's say we had a fiction piece that dealt with cats. Well, if I'm looking through samples of different illustrators and I see somebody who can render a cat and it looks like kind of the style I want, I might be more apt to hire them than somebody who's painting buildings, right? Because that's two totally different things there. Like I said, there's some of that I can see past, and I can see skill and mastery that I think, well, if they can paint this subject, they can probably paint what I'm looking for as well. But certainly, if you want to get a job in the gaming industry and any of those sorts of industries where they already have a character in the world, by all means, do plenty of copying of that work to show them that you have the skills that you can go in there and create new stuff using what they already have.
Cool. So getting a lot of thank yous as people are wrapping up their paintings at home. They were painting kind of along as we were talking. I have a couple questions that people have asked in the comments that I'm going to ask you, but for the most part, I think you answered as you went. Aaron, you may have some questions or comments too, but I only have 3. And the first one is, and this is specific, and you may not know the answer, Eric, but I'm still going to ask. What is a better paint for outdoors on like totem poles or signs at camp? Acrylics or oils?
I would probably tend to go with acrylic just because it's that plastic base, and so it's very durable. I think a lot of murals that you see painted on the sides of buildings are done with acrylic paint. Even the paint that you paint your house with is acrylic based a lot of times. Sometimes it's enamel. You might oftentimes see enamel, which is an oil-based paint used on wood trim around doors and baseboards and things like that. But I think the majority of the paint that you put down on the wall is acrylic based. So that might be a good question for somebody at an art supply store or at the paint manufacturer. I mean, you could send an email in to a place like Liquitex, who made the tube paint that I showed before, and just ask them, what are your recommendations? I would also suggest finding online mural artists whose work that you admire and send them an email. Many of them may be very willing to answer your questions and just say, hey, I'm working on this mural, or planning on working on this mural. Can you recommend to me, what type of paint would be best in your experience that you've used over the years? So always good to ask the experts.
Good tip.
All right, question 2.
Okay. Yes, question 2. So when you're using acrylics, is the color you're painting true to what it's going to dry as? Somebody commented that when she uses markers, she finds that the colors don't match her idea after they dry. They get brighter. Do you find the same to be true with acrylics?
That's an excellent question, and it's just the opposite, that the paint is going to dry slightly darker than what it is when it's wet. And going back to that discussion about the artist materials versus the student materials, that's another difference, that you'll find that the student materials will tend to dry even darker from what they are wet than what the artist's materials are. The more expensive paint will have less color shifting as they dry. So one thing you could do with that is you could make yourself a palette or color wheel, right? And mix up the colors that you want to use and just paint a small swatch of them onto a piece of scrap cardboard or whatever material you're going to paint on, so that the surface is the same. If you're going to be painting on canvas, if you have an old canvas, or you can take a piece of cardboard, and I talked about preparing the canvas with gesso. So this is gesso. It's also acrylic paint, but it's much thicker and much more opaque. So you can take an old painting that you have and cover over it with gesso and have a fresh canvas if you're not interested in what the painting was underneath. But take whatever you're going to be painting on and the surface of the background color, and just paint some swatches of the colors that you want to use and let them dry and see how they look when they're dry. And if that's not the color that you're looking for in the final piece, then go back and adjust your paint on the palette and add a little bit of whatever color is going to make it shift in the direction that you want it to go, either lighter or darker or brighter or something else.
Good advice. Okay, I do have one more question for Eric, but now I've got a question for Aaron because I know he knows the answer. Several people are asking, how do we get the badge? It's all you.
The art merit badge?
That's what I guessed too. Yeah, I think they're wondering, so what I painted along with you, how do I get the art merit badge now?
Okay, so this is just right. This is requirement, I think it was 4, right? Which requires you to paint in multiple mediums. So just what you did today is just one part of requirement 4, which is just one part of the badge in its entirety. So what you should do is go to your local troop, your local scoutmaster, or your local council and get in touch with an art merit badge. If you don't have one in your troop, there's probably one in your district or in your area somewhere, and communicate with them over what you've done, submit it to them, tell them you watched our video, send them a link if they're not familiar with it. They should be fine. Of course, the decision is ultimately up to the merit badge counselor to accept it or not, but it should be fine if you show them what you produced. And again, this is simply one requirement of the 7 or 8 maybe requirements that are in the merit badge as a whole. So we're just kind of giving you a start here on your way to earning the art merit badge. You got to do the rest of the work, though. There's still some more work to be done. This isn't the whole thing.
That's
And
right.
I'll add to that. I know in our troop, we have to contact the merit badge coordinator first before starting on a merit badge and get a blue card filled out. So check with your troop too and see if you need to get that done before you get started. Some troops will let you complete the requirements as long as you can show proof of having done it. Then you can fill out your blue card after that. But check with your advancement coordinator in your troop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so anybody who's not a scout and you're just tuning in, you got to be a scout and Scouts BSA to earn merit badges. And they're not necessarily like patches. Merit badges take a lot of work. Each one takes a lot of work to earn just one badge. It's truly a badge of honor. So if you want to show that you have started out on the art merit badge, you're just starting out with the art merit badge when you're working towards requirement 4. There's a lot involved. But if you tune in every day at 2 p.m. this week, by the end of the week, you're going to have 4 or more sketches to show your merit badge counselor, which will make more sense when you're in Scouts. You'll know what that means if you are in Scouts BSA. You'll be able to show those to your merit badge counselor and get a really good start probably on requirement 4, if not totally complete it. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see a URL where you can learn more about different media we're taking on this week. And I've got another question for Eric. A few people who were drawing or painting along they didn't have all the colors you had. If you only have a couple colors handy, do you say, wait till you get some more colors, or do you think that there's something that can be done with any combo of colors?
So that's really a personal choice, right? A lot of artists work monochromatically, which means they only use one color. So if you are doing pen and ink, which we'll see on Friday, or pencil, which Daryl Collins is going to demonstrate tomorrow, those are only one color, right? And you can make it lighter or darker by adding more lines or pressing harder with your pencil, things like that. And that's perfectly fine. Some people even paint in a single color. So my advice would be, depending on what you want to paint, if it's something that involves a lot of colors, then I would do your best to go out and get the colors that you need to make that happen. And as I said in the video, red, yellow, and blue are the primary colors, and you can mix most other colors from those 3 and adding in the white and the black to make lighter and darker shades of those colors. So if you need the bare minimum, that'll get you going. Let's say you've got a tube of orange and a tube of some kind of weird green at home, and that's all you have. Well, you can choose to just use those 2 colors, or maybe just one of those colors. You can also do some mixed media. So maybe you've got some markers or crayons or colored pencils. All of those can be worked together to come up with the piece that you want. You could even use spray paint with it as well. You obviously want to do that outside where it's well ventilated, and make sure that wherever you're painting has something to catch the overspray, so you're not getting paint on the driveway or mom and dad's car or anything like that. But yeah, just don't let the few colors that you have limit you. Also, you don't have to paint something using the colors that you expect it to be. All right, and I'll give you an example of that. So a friend of our family's owns a painting studio here, and she's been doing some contests lately using acrylic paint. And so I painted this recently of my 3 kids, right,
Oh,
that are real energetic. And you can see that the skin tone is regular skin tone, right, flesh color. And I usually don't like mixing that because it's hard to get that color right. So here's an example of a gift I given to my wife years ago that I painted on a wine bottle. And all I used was red, yellow, and blue. And all of those colors got mixed from there. So, and a little bit of white. So you use your yellow and your white for the light colors. You can mix your red and blue together for the dark colors. And you can go from there. And it doesn't have to be color that's true to what life is. You can have arbitrary color.
I like that. So
A great artist that has that works that way, his name is Philip Berkey, B-U-R-K-E. If you want to look him up, he's done portraits for Rolling Stone magazine and has been one of my favorites for years and years. But he paints that same way. He also does sort of distorted portraits, not quite caricatures, but not true to form, as well, like a photograph. But he uses a lot of that arbitrary color. So yeah, take what you have and do what you can with it. Don't let it hinder you or hold you back.
I like that answer. So really, you only need one color to paint something, and you could also get creative if you have a handful of colors that aren't what you expect. I liked that answer there at the end. Aaron, did you have any questions?
Well, the only thing I would like to, great job on the video, Eric. One thing I would like to say is I really liked, I think there's probably understandably kind of a fascination with the cutting edge computer graphics because it is cool and modern and like the shiny new toy. But I really liked when you did that sort of blue swatch at the top of the page and you talked about how you could add like toothpicks to it or something like that. Good luck doing that with your fancy computer. Am I right, guys? I mean, that's kind of a cool old-fashioned way to do it, but it creates a really kind of a cool texture that you can't get from computer art, right? So I think that's an advantage maybe right there to doing it what might be considered old school by some people. Adding, what did you, not multimedia, Eric, what do you call that?
Well, it's just putting, a thick
Mixed
amount
media. Mixed media?
Yeah, mixed media, right.
Yeah,
You want to stick
right.
something into it.
Right. Yeah,
that's
something cool.
I call that old school 3D printing.
Exactly, yes. It
Yeah,
gives it
and
some cool texture.
I would add to that even on the computer, there's still a lot of value in starting with pencil and paper to work your ideas out, right? And a lot of artists will sketch on paper first and then scan that into the computer to draw on top of. Or like Joey was showing yesterday with his nice Cintiq monitor where he can draw directly on the glass into the computer. He's doing that same thing that you would be doing with pencil and paper, but digitally, and he's sketching it out first multiple times as he showed, right? That he would do another layer, knock it back so it's a little bit lighter and draw on top of that again and again until he gets it to that final place where he wants it to be. So don't think that when you're starting out that you're gonna have the masterpiece the first time, right? You may make some mistakes and have to start over. Brian, if you could show that clip that I sent to you earlier today. This is something that I found from an illustrator on Instagram, and I thought it was pretty cool to take a look at. It shows process. And one of the things I was going to say too, at the beginning of the broadcast where I talked about what you see online is the finish line, right? And it's works of art that are the best of what people have. One of the great things about social media now, and any artist starting out now, you have so many advantages over what I had growing up, right? There's tutorials on YouTube and Skillshare and who knows where else that show you how to do these things that you don't have to go to art class to do it, right? You can do it right in your own home. And a lot of artists are also getting to a point where they show process work, which is phenomenal, so that you see what their process is and how they get from the blank canvas to the finished piece of work. And a lot of times that's a time lapse that's sped up, so you might not have as much detail, here we go, but you get to see how they get to where they ended up and how much it might change over time, right? So she started out with this drawing in pencil and added some paint, completely covered up the whole thing. She's using both acrylic and some mixed media in there. She's got it's like maybe a charcoal pencil that she's drawing with. And that's another thing too, that, you know, how I had the sketch of Grizz underneath, you don't necessarily have to have that to start out with. If you have something in your mind, you can just start painting right on top of it, right? And if you don't like it, cover part of it up, paint right on top of that. And so I just love the looseness of her work, the energy that it has. You know, she's not worrying about making mistakes there. She's just tearing into it. So look around, you know, online with your parents' permission and find some artists that you like. See who's putting process work out there. See where you can get some instruction, you know, tutorial videos. There's just a wealth of information out there that, you know, there's no reason that all of us can't be artists.
True. And whether you're working on the Art Merit Badge, or you're younger, or you're older, or you're just not interested in it, but you like sketching along or painting, Eric introduced a very cool other opportunity to share your artwork with us, with Boys Life. I think we have a URL where you can head right now and submit your artwork, whether it's from yesterday or today. We knew that maybe it was going to be featured on boyslife.org after you submitted some of your artwork, but Eric teased that just maybe it could be in the magazine potentially. That's cool.
We got to ask the boss that.
Yeah, Eric's closer to being able to make that decision than I am, but we'll make sure it's okay with the boss. I have a good feeling about this. I think that we could probably get some art in there, but who knows? No promises. So the URL's at the bottom of the screen.
I would suggest too, you know, this started out as having our comic artists do some demos of their characters. And so that's where the My Own Comic came from, if you want to create a one-page comic of your own. But if you just want to create a cool piece of art, you know, like the Pokeball that got painted today, send that in too. And we'll see what all kind of submissions we get. And there might be some place, whether it's in our social media or in the magazine itself, that we can feature some of that work, even if it's not a comic strip.
Yeah, I love it. I promise you we'll share it on social media. So very cool. I'll be checking that right after we're offline today and see if we can post anything to Instagram or something. I'd love to see what you guys have worked up. Any closing thoughts, you guys?
Great job on the video, Eric. I'd say everybody just, like we said before, get out there and draw. Let's see what you got. Let's do it. It's exciting.
Every day, get that sketchbook and just start doodling.
Cool. We'd love to have you back, Eric, and everybody, we'd love to have you back at 2 p.m. Central tomorrow. We will be doing some more artwork, and artwork.
That's right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Good job. High five, everybody. There we go. Yes.